Okay. We probably want to give it a minute for people to enter this space. I don't have any good background music ready. I could hum, but no one would enjoy that.
We would say we're holding curtain.
We're holding
curtain.
Holding curtain as the audience arrives. I'm going to give it one more minute and then I'll kick us off. So for folks coming in, we're just letting the virtual audience gather. I'm trying to read all the titles of the books on the bookshelf behind Jason.
I point out some of my favorites back there.
I see a little Batman.
I see it for dummies. I recognize that yellow and black.
Yeah, that's one of my consulting books from years ago when I joined my company. They gave it to us.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a Batman fan, so Batman is always somewhere in my office.
I love it.
Because my view is, as a superhero, anybody can be Batman. You just have to have enough money.
And right, it's tools.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to have a mutant, genes.
Exactly. You can't be Superman. Everyone can't be Wolverine, but anyone can be Batman.
I like it.
All right, we are at 4:02, 2 minutes after the hour, so I am going to go ahead and kick us off. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Gretchen Butler. I'm the Managing Director of Theatrical Outfit, which is my day job, and I have been honored to volunteer with the great group from Arts Vote ATL, and I want to thank everyone on the team that is helping make the mayoral forum and the district forums happen. It is fantastic to have this many people civically minded and able to contribute their time to making things like this happen. So I want to thank that entire team. And I want to thank the people that you're going to hear from today. So Jason Hudgens, thank you for being here. Jason is one of the city council candidates in District 10. I will say that Andrea Boone, who is the current council person for District 10, was unable to join us today. And Marcy Collier Overstreet, who is the current council person for District 11, was unable to join us today. And Ron Shakir, who was also running in District 11, we did not hear back from. So we hope that we will find other ways to reach out to those candidates. So I'm going to introduce our moderator and then hand it over. Chandra Stevens Albright. Chandra, thank you for being here today. Chandra is the managing director at Kenny Leon's True Colors Theater. She's been there since 2017 and joined the nonprofit sector after a 22-year career at the Coca-Cola Company. So she is largely responsible, in my mind, she is fully responsible for the Coca-Cola Freestyle that so many of us know and love here in Atlanta. So thank you, Chandra, for being here. And I also just want to say and acknowledge that Chandra grew up in, I think, District 10. Is that correct? Okay, so we have a hometown girl speaking with a hometown candidate about views on the arts. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the two of you and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you, Gretchen. And thank you, Arts ATL Vote. Jason, so nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you in person. I am a big fan of the True Colors Theater, so it's really an honor to be here with you.
Well, we're happy to be here, and a lot of our folks come from District 10 as well as District 11. I grew up on Lyndhurst and then moved over to District 11 right off of Cascade and Harbin. So this is near and dear to my heart. And I know that True Colors viewers are going to want to hear from you about, how your views will help make the arts community stronger in Atlanta.
Most definitely.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How'd you get to this point?
I tell everyone my story starts with being an Army brat. My dad was in the military and kind of the first generation to leave their hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee. My parents were born and raised in Chattanooga. My dad joined the military, and it really exposed us. For the first time in literally, I think, a year and a half, me and all of my siblings were together last night with our parents. Everyone just happened to be in town. And we had an opportunity to sit down and kind of talk and kind of reminisce. And that experience really did set me up for this work that I'm doing. Living all over the world, in different countries, one of the things that constantly connected us was the human experience. You found that people had a lot more similarities than differences once you got to know them. And I brought that experience, to my career. I'm a corporate trainer by trade. I've run the brand and leadership training programs for IHG Hotels and Resorts for the last decade. I've been a community president. I was president of the Westview Community Organization for nearly 5 years. I was an NPU chairman. And so when we talk about kind of the issues of why I'm running for council, I've worked on a bunch of these issues at different levels, whether it's the corporate side, whether it's the community side, whether it's just being, a resident in an ever-changing Southwest Atlanta. Going in, and it's something that the human experience is the passion that drives me. Nobody in their right mind runs for office without having some higher purpose that drives them. And for me, it's my neighbors. When I see how policy impacts people, that's really the reason that I've set myself on fire, and threw myself into this process.
That's amazing. So this is a progression. You're no newcomer just hopping into the political pool for the first time. You've had lots of on the ground political experience in the area. That's great.
Yeah, my friends and family will tell you I'm a background guy. Being NPU chairman was probably my dream position ever, because I got to work on these issues, but I didn't have to be out front. You can kind of work in the background. And so it is a progression for me, but I think this moment in Atlanta is really calling for people to step out of the background and to step up. All of us need to present ourselves right now to offer some solutions, because our city is at a turning point. And if we don't do something differently, we're going to look back on this period as a pivotal point in our city's history. So it's important that all of us step up in different ways.
Agree. So you talked about human experience, and we're here because the arts community is very interested in hearing how our political candidates want to support the arts. We feel that arts has a potential to have a great impact on quality of life issues. And so we just wanted to get your thoughts on how you see how we can help you in Council District 10. What can the arts do to help improve some of the things you see there in the district?
I mean, if you think back just over the past, year and a half, as we've gone through COVID, what we've done as a society really is we ran to the arts, whether it was, DJ Quarantine with DJ Nice, whether it was, seeing Hamilton on Disney Plus, or whatever it was, getting out and about, we ran to the arts because it was the way that connected us. And I think when we look at the issues that we are seeing in District 10, whether it's housing, whether it's, issues with connecting education, whether it's the deeper issues, what the arts allow us to do. And I learned this, early on. I had a football coach. I played football in high school, and he required us to do something in the arts. So I was in the choir, and actually did musical theater as a football player in high school because our coach made us. And what he said was it forced us to think differently about issues, and to see how we were connected in together, because whether you're on stage or part of a band, or, whether even if you're just looking at a piece of art and you connect with someone else around it, it forces you to connect in a different way rather than just a linear, here's what I see, here's what it is, here's how it makes me feel, here is the emotion that is pulling me on. And I think when we look at the issues, the static issues that we tend to talk about in political campaigns, they really are connection issues. When we talk about the 10th district and, public safety is an issue when people are not properly connected into community, don't see themselves as a part of the community. And what the result of that is crime. We can chase the result, we can chase the crime rate all day long, or we can focus in on what are the root causes and where are those connection issues on the front end, that if we solve those on the front end, the result gets better on the back end. So I think that, it's the intersection of this, honestly, in a bunch of these issues. That's how the arts community can help. I think if we all do our part, I don't think everyone has to do the same thing. Everyone has to do what they are uniquely gifted to do. And if we're doing that, and then, people in my position and other positions will connect those different groups and communities together, we get a better result overall.
Totally agree. You talked about intersections and intersectionality. That's a big word in the arts. And it goes back to what you said as well about seeing things from a different perspective. Love that football coach, by the way. What a great
Coach Catlett in Louisville, Kentucky. Shout out to him.
Oh my God. I wish they had nerds take sports, because that could have changed my life.
Listen, the funny thing is I was a nerd who was, I'm 6'6" tall. You can't tell I'm sitting here, but I'm 6'6". And so I was a nerd who played football because, I was I was over 6 feet in high school. Size. And I just happened to have teachers around me and really good mentors who saw parts of me and was like, it's okay to be smart and good at, and all of the above.
Nice. I love it. Well, going back to intersectionality, one of the challenges we face in the arts community is money. I mean, it's, especially if you're competing for resources at the government level, you're competing for public safety funds and housing funds and education funds. And you know what? We want all of those things to be fully funded. But are there sources, or what kind of thoughts do you have about how we can build some of those resources for the arts, and like you said, intersect and use them to bear upon those public service issues, use arts to bear upon those, but the funding to do so?
Yeah, I think it starts out, number one, and we talk about this, and I talk about this when it comes to infrastructure or public safety, is you've got to have a plan that's ready to go. When it comes to competing for dollars, and I know this as a community leader, but also as a corporate leader, you've got to have something, quote unquote, that's shovel ready. And I think that's where, and one of the questions that the team asked me, kind of in the run up to this forum, was around the strategic plan, the Atlanta Regional Commission, Arts and Cultural Strategic Plan. The fact that it has not been updated in years, the fact that we're not actioning on it year over year. So we're not actually taking the plan, looking at what parts we've implemented, what parts probably just didn't work. There were things that were put into the plan in 2016 and 2017 that would not work in a 2021 world. But if we're not actioning along that plan as we go through, what you're going to find is that it puts us at a strategic disadvantage when it comes to those federal grants, some of those state dollars and other philanthropic dollars that may be available to us as a city, or to connect different projects in together. I also think, and I talked with the president of my retail association in Westview. She and I worked on a bunch of different projects. We, as a community, put an art installation on the Beltline around our community history. We worked in, we have several murals that we put up in the community during my leadership. And one of the things that she talked about is at the local level, particularly in this environment, it's important that we create and streamline the process for how we get money. It's good to have a plan, but how do you get the money down to the artist level? All the way through. And I think about my local artists, and I can call their names. Mike Jones, that lives a street over from me, who created a community art installation at a local car wash, where he invited artists to come in and paint certain bays, and then invited the community to come in. When you have innovative ideas like that brings art down to the community level, how are we streamlining the process so that money can get down to those artists, but also so that artists can get their information and art up to these funding resources? And I think also, one of the very easy things that we can do as a city partner is talk about pass-through organizations. So when we're talking about grant money and tools like that, where are the organizations if an artist doesn't have the infrastructure around them? They're just an artist. And I know people like that. You have people that are good at what they do. They don't have the infrastructure around them. How are we connecting them with entities, organizations, or groups that do have that infrastructure that allow them to be the artists, and then I can provide you the infrastructure? And so I think there's more that we can do in those ways. And those are, one's a big plan, and the other two are really just really strategic things that we can do day in and day out that lead to better results on the back end.
Yeah, that's a huge point. I mean, if you're an actor, you're a dancer, you're an artist, you're a genius. You're creating magic, not necessarily, doing QuickBooks and figuring out, Hootsuite for social media posts and that sort of thing. Not to say that those two things are mutually exclusive, but you got to spend a pretty big part of your brain making your magic. So I love what you said about finding ways to bring those funds directly to the artist, and then finding ways to expose the neighborhood to that artist's work. A lot of times people think, oh, you just drew a picture. But like you said, you look at that picture, you see all kinds of things you might not have thought of before.
Yeah, and I think, from the community level, one of the things that we did in Westview and in NPUT under my leadership is whenever we commission something, whether it was the Charmaine Minifield mural on the Beltline, whether it was the art installation on the Beltline that we did as a community, we invited the community to be a part of that. And that's one thing that we always worked with artists around, is give us an opportunity for the community to do something. Because when people are actively involved, they, number one, then see themselves in this art, and it continues to live on. They talk about it, they bring it, more awareness to it. But then on the other end, they look for other opportunities. I can't tell you how many members of my community, when they see a blank wall, now their thought is, what can we do with this? Or where are the options as we're putting, other art installations or, working with other groups in place? Where are those opportunities? Because they've been exposed.
Right.
If you don't expose a community, or you cut a community off, and, I said, I was a fan of the True Colors Theater, partly because as a Black man, I see myself represented in art that comes out of that theater. I think it's important that we connect the community in as many ways as possible, because when people see themselves reflected in the art or in the community, they will then become an advocate for it going forward.
Truly, truly, truly. I'm not going to talk about the succession. I'm saying the words, but I'm really not going to ask you about Buckhead City. However, I do want to note that arts resources and arts organizations are thick on the ground in that district, and also in Midtown, and also in Kirkwood, and they're not as thick on the ground in District 10. So what are some of the thoughts you have about how you might bring some of those resources into District 10, and bring some funding for those resources into District 10, so we can have those arts organizations serving the people right there?
As a community, number one, we have to commit to seeing art spaces, and what I'll call them spaces that are ambidextrous, allows for different types of art to come in, whether it's music, whether it's theater, whether it's some other type of installation, placed in every part of the community. It is vitally important that people have access. And that's one of the things that we see as a running theme and an issue in the 10th district. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether it's housing, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's art, we have an access issue in the 10th district. And if we solve that larger equity issue, then we'll start to see more flow even in these areas. I think it is important that and I was answering another group that I'm going to be meeting with a little later this evening around the idea of the council district budget. One of the things that I would love to do is create some participatory budgeting as part of the council district budget to bring groups and entities into the community, create pop-up art installations, but also create partnerships. We have, we may not have a theater in the middle of the community like you see in Buckhead or in Midtown, but we do have schools in every corner of our community. Where's the partnership, and a better partnership facilitated by the city with APS to bring certain entities, to Douglas High School or to Mays High School or to, the elementary schools or middle schools. Those are opportunities. They're already gathering spots for many of the families, and connecting in, particularly with our kids early. If you can capture their imagination, it will pay dividends as we go forward. I also think, LaShondra, we have to look at art through the lens and bringing access in through the lens of economic development. This is an area that Atlanta is lagging in big time. As someone who's, lived all over, the country and the world, other cities have built literal tourist industries off of their arts community. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia and its murals has created an entire niche around tourism just around those murals. And so if we can create that installation, if you think of Atlanta, we export our culture literally all over the world, whether it's music, whether it's, the clothing we wear, all of that is art. How do we create opportunities at the ground level for people to participate in it? so that I don't just see my culture that's reflected in my neighborhood on TV. I actually get to see it in my neighborhood, and I can participate in it, whether it's festivals that we put together. There is more that we can do. And back to that intersectionality, this is where the opportunity, around things like, safe streets and infrastructure. We have opportunity. I would love, Lyndhurst is the epicenter of our, community. I know you grew up there. Let's shut down Lyndhurst for an afternoon. Let's invite the groups that grew up in these neighborhoods, that came from these communities, to come home and have conversations with their neighborhoods to create opportunities. I think that's something that the city has lagged in. We've seen it on some scales, particularly, Music Midtown and some other things. I think there's an opportunity to create a micro community version of that, so that kids and neighborhoods can see themselves reflected in that process.
Oh man, that's cool. I have my old house on Lyndhurst in my Zillow favorites because I'm like, oh, I want to buy that house back. I want it
Buy
back.
it back and move back.
I know.
Do it before you can't do it anymore.
I know, right? That's why I keep on watching it. So I want to pause here and see if there's any questions, ask our fearless leaders if they've seen any questions pop up, because you've said some amazing things that are very thought-provoking, and I could do this all day, but I want to make sure if we have anyone who has some thoughts, we can share them. So I'm not seeing anything right now. So I will go on and talk about the G word, gentrification.
Yes, ma'am.
What's happening? Well, how is that affecting District 10, and what are your thoughts on in keeping your folks safe?
I'm a data guy. As a corporate trainer, I have to be a data guy. It's one of the things. My mom literally was at a meet and greet a couple weeks ago and said I used to drive her crazy as a kid because I would pull data and numbers and information and use it in arguments that got me in a bunch of when I was a kid. It serves me well, though, at this point. When we talk about gentrification, again, intersectionality, we tend to think about it through the lens of race, but it is economics, it is race, it is access, it is all of the above connecting together in a way. The 10th district is the epicenter really for what we are seeing as far as gentrification, and that's by the city's own data. The Neighborhood Change Report released by the City of Atlanta identifies Westview, Collier Heights, Adamsville, and the Benjamin E. Mays corridors as areas where gentrification is both taking hold, but also causing a lot of displacement. And we're seeing this from the levels, and I'll tell you how I noticed it in Westview. I noticed it when we didn't see young children in the neighborhood anymore. There was a particular Halloween 5 years ago when I first became president, and we went to do the trick-or-treating map, and we started thinking about where are the kids, and they had been displaced by the movement in home prices and what we're seeing there. I will say this, I love, my new neighbors. I'm friends with a bunch of them. I love that in Westview, many of the people who have moved in do have an eye on this and are actively seeking solutions of how we can prevent displacement, how we can create a more inclusive community that allows legacy neighbors and people who grew up in these neighborhoods when they weren't as desirable. A home in Westview sold for under $100,000 not 30 years ago, literally in this decade.
Yeah.
And the house across the street from me just sold, for $500,000. When we talk about gentrification, what this really is we are mortgaging the future of our city. Young professionals, young families are being moved out and displaced. And I tell anyone, I turned 40 years old in 6 months. I would not be able to afford to live in Westview if I moved in today, as opposed to moving in 6 years ago. I bought in this community on purpose. It was a Beltline neighborhood. My family is originally from Collier Heights. And so I had a connection to this side of town. But as we're seeing the amenities come in, we have to look for and be very intentional about ensuring that people who lived in these communities when they weren't as desirable, when they were in some ways thrown away and not given the resources, are able to enjoy the new amenities and resources that are moving in now. It's not a bad thing, but it is important that we don't lose the people who built these communities.
Absolutely. And you talk about like older people that have been there for a while, renters who don't actually own the property. A lot of artists live in places that were, less expensive, and now they're, getting booted out too. So we're very interested in making sure that gentrification, it's not the same as displacement. The two don't necessarily have to go together, but to your point, you have to have a plan.
unfortunately, in Atlanta, right now, they are synonymous. I agree with you that they don't have to
They
necessarily
don't
go
have to,
together.
they are, yeah.
But they are, and I think that the lack of a plan amongst our city leaders is part of it. As part of my platform of my campaign, I said that we have to use intention and innovation here. We have to be intentional about what policies we put in place, but we also have to bring everyone to the table to come up with as many solutions that may not exist right now. I hear a lot that when our city leaders talk about gentrification, they talk through the lens of New York or DC or LA. And I think we should learn the lessons of other cities, but Atlanta is unique, and the way these factors are happening in Atlanta is very unique. And much of it is intentional from, a not so great part of our history, racism, redlining, other
White
items.
flight.
Yeah,
Mhm.
all of that is very unique here in Atlanta and how it's coming together. We've got to be very innovative of how we solve it.
Yeah. So for those folks in District 10 who don't know you, they may be more familiar with, I think Councilperson Boone's her first term too. So this is a district that has had some new blood in the recent past. So what would you tell those constituents? Like why does it make sense for them to have Jason Hudgens in this seat?
I think you have to look at the skill set. I don't disparage Councilwoman Boone. I know that she loves this district, but I also do know that she very much relies on her family connection and history to being in the seat. I look at running for council as a job interview. And just as I have interviewed many people in my position at the corporate level, what we do is we look at where are we now as a company? What are the skill sets that are needed? Where are we going as a company? What are the skill sets that will be needed in the future? And does this person either possess those skills now, or will they have the ability to flex there as we go forward? I think as we're looking forward, one of the things that I point out in this race between me and my opponent is the amount of legislation that is sponsored. We see a lot of legislation out of the East Side neighborhoods and districts and out of the North Side districts. We don't see them out of the West Side districts. And if we're going to see movement around these issues in our district, then we're going to have legislation. You're going to have someone who sees these issues through the lens of how can we fix it at the legislative side. I tell anyone that I want to use data and information. When we talk about these issues, when we talk about displacement, or we're talking about, and you mentioned the artist community living in communities like the 10th District because they weren't as expensive. What are the issues that happen when you lose an artist community? There's actual data around that. How does that impact your school district? How does that impact your corporate environment and your economic development? There definitely is opportunity to connect the data and information to legislation. And I think that's where the difference is between me and my opponent in this race. As an MPU chairman, as a neighborhood president, I worked always and pushed always at the legislative side of how do we solve this, not just for now, but for where we're going in the future. We have to have an eye in our city and amongst our city council of not just where will Atlanta be in 5 or 10 years, but how are we setting Atlanta up for 25 or 30 years? I have a 16-year-old nephew. What is the economic environment going to be if he wants to live in Atlanta? What does it look like to live, work, and play in this community if he wants to live in Atlanta? And I want to make sure that, if something were to happen to me, my house is willed to him, he gets to keep it. I want to make sure he has the ability to do that if he so chooses, and doesn't have to leave our community looking for greener pastures because we had leadership that did not connect these issues at this pivotal point.
That makes me think, envision a District 10 4 years from now. What do you see that's different? What are those skills it will have grown into?
Number one, I think that, and I said this on my website, I want to see, I think District 10 is already the epicenter of excellence in our community, particularly Black excellence. When we talk about cultural excellence, you have Collier Heights in our community, people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Joseph E. Boone, and many of the heroes that we talk about in our city, particularly of the civil rights era, came out of this district. What we are not is, we're not the epicenter of solutions in our city. Every cultural ill that lives in our society literally lives in the 10th district. And I think if we are more innovative, if we create solutions here, we have the ability. I think Atlanta should be leading on a bunch of different issues. We should be exporting our solutions out to a DC or a Baltimore. We're not doing that right now. The skill set I think that is going to be vitally needed is someone who can connect these issues at an intimate level bring them together, put together solutions, and then export them out, test them, and then bring data back so that we can not just have movement here in Atlanta, but that we can have movement regionally and even nationally. The civil rights movement was exported all over the world. Why are we not doing the same thing around housing, or how we do, arts funding, or how we connect in the community? There is opportunity there.
So what are some of the things you see you could use? I don't want to use. So District 10 has all these societal ills, but it also has, working for it, it's the home of a lot of Black excellence. I thought of Herman Russell. He's from Collier Heights.
Yep.
So what are some of the things you see testing, or let's do this in District 10 and then export that solution? What's a big one for you?
One of the ideas that I have, I call it my beloved community plan, is Martin Luther King Jr. Drive should be a national model for Black entrepreneurship and Black excellence in the country. Why is there not a Black-owned grocery store on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive in Atlanta? Why is there not a Black restaurant row? Why is there not a cultural arts center on MLK Drive for the city of Atlanta? I think that's something that we can test. There is an MLK Drive in every city across the country. We can create a national model in the hometown of Martin Luther King Jr., literally down the street from the home that he lived in, and create a model that we can export out to other parts of the country, while also creating space and room for the unique demographics of the district. I don't ignore any other demographic. We have a large Asian community in the 10th district. We have a large Ethiopian community, but the district is over 90% Black. And so we have to look at solutions that specifically target Black and brown communities, and look for how we can lead on those. And I think if we can do that in the 10th district, we do it across Atlanta, and then across our region.
That is a great idea. The first thing that popped into my head was that Chris Rock joke about Martin Luther King. You're driving anywhere in the country, it's like, don't get off on that exit, because that's not a good place to be. And it's like, that's a damn shame. This man has brought peace and joy to the world, and that's, MLK becomes, let's name the part of the town that has the most issues after him. But I love that idea of my beloved community and making that vision. That's beautiful.
Yeah, if you look at the vision of Martin Luther King Jr., what he talked about, it wasn't just what we teach our children through the school system of the I Have a Dream speech. There really was an economic viability plan that he talked about that ran the length of his entire life. And I don't see that living in Atlanta the way that it should, where it impacts every part of the community. I think we talk about the Atlanta Way, a group of individuals who work with the business community, and there is benefit and quote unquote peace. But if you look at the Atlanta Way, it has left a large part of Atlanta, particularly the 10th district, behind. A kid born in this district has a life expectancy 12 years shorter than a kid born 12 miles to the north. The rates of asthma and cancer are off the charts in the district because you have a highway that runs through it, but there are no mitigating devices like sound and barriers that are put up in more affluent neighborhoods. And so there are opportunities here, number one, to solve the past equity issues, but then to focus forward of how do we keep these equity issues from growing in the future in our city, and then exporting that out.
Yeah, I want to say the Peyton Roadblock was in your district. The 10 and 11 are really, yeah. Yep. So talk about overcoming past inequity.
100%.
Yeah. Let me check in with our moderators and see if any questions have come in. I am not good at multitasking on these things, so I'm not gonna. There she is. Hey,
okay. Hi. We have not had any questions from the audience, but you are doing a fantastic job, and I think we could maybe do like one final question, and then we can wrap it up. Does that sound good? Chandra, if you have one like good closer.
Well, I think the question about why Jason Hutchin was a good one. So, and you gave a great answer, but I mean, I'll leave it to you. What do you want to leave? If there's one thing you want people to leave this conversation with, Jason, what is it?
I want people to leave, honestly, Chandra, I want people to leave with a realistic view of what's happening in our city. We have to take off our rose-colored glasses and realize that there are some issues in our city, and there are definitely some issues in the 10th district. I will say this though, as a community leader, as somebody who has given a large part of my adult life to these issues at the community level, I tell Westview, I told NPUT before, and I've told the district that there's nothing wrong in our district that can't be solved within the district. We have the tools and resources. What we don't have right now are leaders who are actively calling us to the mountaintop, actively calling us to be better across the board and connect the resources together. We leave too many people out of conversations, and it gives us the results that we see now. If you look at the district, if you look at where we are, why does Atlanta have the largest racial wealth gap in the country? That shouldn't live in Atlanta. The health disparities that I talked about earlier, the issues, even with APS in our school district, how are we connecting our kids in so that they can not just see the businesses that are moving in, they may be able to start or build a business that rivals a Google or Apple? Are we giving them those resources within the community? There is opportunity to do better. And it's not diminishing the great things that are happening. There are many great things happening, but I think as a leader, one of the things that we should be doing is, number one, focusing forward, seeing what do we need to be solving right now, what do we need to be solving for the future, and then what should the plan be for where we want to go? What Atlanta do we want to exist in 50 years? And I think that is where the opportunity is right now in the 10th district. And it can include everyone who currently lives here. We don't have to create a whole new subset in the community. We can use the neighborhoods and people who live here now because they have built and sustained a great community. There is better, and we can build on that solid foundation going forward.
So your answer made me think of one final question, and that is, we had a huge turnout for president voting, right?
Yes.
And I, as a former resident of District 11, as a person who was able to vote, I was a kid in District 10, but still, they're close to each other. You could go into a precinct and just swing a cat by the tail, as they say, and not hit anybody. It's just nobody there. So how would you impress upon your constituents the vital importance of getting out to the polls for a council race?
I think that you're right. There's a lot of focus on presidential politics. There's a lot of focus, of course, even right now on the governor's race next year and the Senate races. But I would say that your city council person has more of an impact on your day-to-day life than President Biden does. The decisions that are made at the city council are impacting what resources are available potentially in your schools via tax breaks that are given, what's happening in the housing market in your community. Are the potholes on your street going to be filled in? Is your street safe to walk on? Are there sidewalks? Are there going to be proper resources around public safety? And so I think that people have to change their mindset, but also as leaders, we have to connect with people outside of wanting their vote. One of the issues that I have in this current environment, and again, I'm a former community president, our current council person has never attended one of my community meetings. That's an issue for me. And so when we're talking about these issues, we also as leaders have to be engaged with the community, not just when we want their vote, but day in and day out, bringing these issues to them. I teach as a corporate trainer to my hotels and those who I train that at the end of the day, as a leader, you're the professional in the room, and it is never incumbent upon those that you are leading to connect in. You as a leader have to look to connect them in and be intentional about that.
Well said. Well said. You're absolutely, that makes my heart sing. Knowing that Joe isn't going to necessarily make sure that sewer grate is fixed on the corner where the leaves are piling up. So that's wonderful. Let me apologize for that swinging the cat comment. I still have some old school references. I have to learn some new phrases, so I apologize for that. But Jason, thank you so much. We really appreciate you stepping into the ring and taking your political experience at the grassroots to the next level and looking to represent the entire district. We wish you all the best. We encourage all of you out there who support the arts to attend as many of these as you can, not just the district that you live in. I don't live in District 10 and 11 anymore. I'm in District 6, but I think it's important to hear what's going on in District 10 because that's where our theater patrons come from. So let's not, kind of narrowly look at our own districts. Let's look at the whole council, look at the mayor, look at all these offices and make sure that your voice is heard.
Chandra, if I
Thanks,
can add
Elvin.
something really quickly there.
Absolutely.
That it is important that people recognize that on the council, one vote doesn't get a lot done. You have to have 8 votes. And so I'd encourage everyone, look across the city at who, not just who you support in your district, but who has a similar mindset to who you support across the board to make sure that we can cobble together 8 votes for whatever progress that you're looking for. I'd encourage people to take a look at my website and my social media. It's jason4atl.com. And on social media, even though Facebook and Instagram are down, but you can find me on Twitter today, jason4atl, across social media. My contact information is on there. You can reach out to me directly. I'll answer you directly. I have a team of people who are helping me, but I like the interaction myself. So we definitely make that happen.
I think I just put it in the chat,
You
but maybe
did.
I didn't. Okay,
That
great.
is correct.
That's about as much multitasking as I can do.
You did fantastic. Chandra, thank you so much for moderating today. Jason, thank you for being here. And for everyone watching live and watching the recording, thank you all. And like Jason said, so the most important thing, get out and vote, learn about the candidates, read about school board, read about city council, read bottom up on your candidates across the city. And let's get out and let's vote and let's get some great support for the arts. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you.